So we've now finished up the English War of the Roses, and what Henry is what's called a new monarch, somebody who consolidates their power at the expense of the nobility. Um, we could go back to the old Justinian Code. What pleases a prince has the force of law. So when we think of kings and queens in our times today, when we're thinking from the 21st century, and we project our image of what kings and queens look like in the past, this is more or less kind of the kings and queens we're talking about. Before this time period in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe as well, the kings and queens didn't have very much power. And so what's happening in England, we'll see the same thing going on with the French and the Spanish monarchs at the same time. And so there's our little reminder of the War of the Roses. So what's happening in France? Well, obviously France is dealing with some of the same issues that England had due to the Hundred Years' War. Right? And so again, it's this rebuilding of the French monarchy. And it's going to happen under the House of Valois. This is a family name, just like before we had the Plantagenets of England, and now we have the Tudors of England. This is the Valois family. And so our story starts with Charles VII, ruled from 1422 until 1461. His big claim to fame, first of all, he was a king when the Hundred Years' War ended. Um, Also, we know that he began to consolidate his power when we think of France itself and the location of France. What he did is that he manipulated nobles in the royal court. He would play them off of each other. And then he'll also take the sound advice from a banker, Jacques Coeur. Jacques Coeur was not a nobleman. He wasn't an aristocrat. He was a banker. And this is what we'll see as well, is that in the generations and centuries after this point, kings will reach out to able individuals, more of a meritocracy than aristocracy, as sometimes as a right-hand man or advisors. So again, the nobility is going to lose power at the expense of the king. Charles also, under the advice of Jacques Coeur, will actually uh, create a direct tax in France. He had to make some concessions to the States General, but this allows him to generate much more money than he had before. When he dies in 1461, his son actually becomes king. His son is Louis the 11th. Okay, so Louis the 11th continued his father's financial power. That's kind of what he did. He was known as a schemer. Apparently, he was known as a universal spider. So, kind of a scary name there, a nickname. But the key with Louis is that he had the money, okay, to bring Burgundy back into the kingdom. Okay? And so in 1477, Duke Charles the Bold is defeated in the Battle of Nancy. Okay? And this ended all that intrigue with the Burgundians, which we'd seen previously with the Hundred Years' War. And so, with the end of English rule, the threat of Burgundy over, France now becomes much more centralized and much more powerful. Also, on a side note, because of this, the killing of Charles the Bold, France will lose the area of Flanders, which again had been the cause of the Hundred Years' War, and Mary, Charles's daughter, will marry the Habsburg Duke Maximilian. Maximilian will become the Holy Roman Emperor, and he'll play a part in the Reformation, Martin Luther, especially through his grandson Charles V, which we'll talk about when we get to Spain. And so when Louis dies in 1483, he leaves a pretty powerful kingdom to his son. And his son is Charles. So what does Charles do? Well, Charles really married up in the consolidation of the French kingdom, because what he does is he marries Anne of Brittany. And when he marries Anne of Brittany, it really does create today what we would think as the political structure and geographic structure of present day France. That's what happens. And so once he does this, he then invades into Italy. So once he consolidates his power and he's a kingdom of France, he promptly invades into Italy. And that's really because of a vague claim to the kingdom of Naples. He had that claim through his paternal grandmother, Maria of Anjou, and he was actually encouraged by the leader of Milan to invade into Italy. So he imagined himself capable of seizing that realm, and then he saw himself as being both the king of England or king of France and the king of an Italian kingdom. And that starts off the Italian Wars. And so, in starting that wars, it basically sets into a series of events into motion that stop Italy from ever becoming unified until the 19th century. So it has wide ranging effects. So here you can see that marriage, and then of course his invasion into Naples. And so just like Henry Tudor, Charles is also a new monarch.